This week for Module 5, accessibility evaluations, I'm taking a look at a project in my 6th grade classes called the Safety Poster Project, and I have another one I'll show shortly for 8th grade, and that involves VEX. In the Rice article this week, page 227 listed many recommendations for assistive technology for visual and hearing impairments. During work on this project this week, I did find ways to assist with that for both visual and hearing impacted learners. We have an immersive reader application that can be changed along with a read aloud link or tab that both people with some auditory or students with auditory issues can work with these technologies to assist them at the learning. Closed captioning is another option that's used, and that was something that came up in the handbook, the online accessibility handbook for this week. Also on pages 5A and 5B in the handbook, there was information listed for Word and Google documents, and this safety poster project is a Word document, but in there they listed some ideas on images, help with the readers, lists, including some bullet points and some color contrasts that could be available. Now, if you look at this sample, I have a little bit of color and some listings down, goes over some of our rules of the project and the construction of the project, and some of our grading criteria and some standards that are also listed. This may not meet all of those recommendations, but we do have some in there. This is an actual project that we do hang in our hallways, and the students are proud of some of the work that they do. They have a choice to do a paper and pencil style, or we give them a choice of a digital option, since they are using their Chromebooks on a fair amount of time. Moving on, I'll take a look at a little different setup with our 8th grade project. I'll switch to here for 8th grade. And I mentioned a short time ago this on VEX VR. And students build VEX cars. And VEX are small robotic cars that can be operated with a handheld controller, or eventually students get to the point where they could do some coding, and they could code a program in there and have their VEX car run off of what they put in there for coding. And what we're looking at is one of our starting lesson plans, like on day 1 of our unit on VEX. For this particular area, though, in the beginning, we do look at the virtual reality platform of VEX, where the students can start learning a little bit about programming and some of the functions that they'll eventually see again once they actually build a physical car. Now, we have a little different setup in this one, where we have a kind of a grid view that the students could see with some bullet points. There's a little overview, more standards that are listed, and down in here some purposes of the project and prompts or good questions asked as the students begin their work in their discovery of VEX. And you can scroll down for the work on the VEX projects. In addition, we did give some other options for students that might be working ahead or have a little bit more of a background, that they could try an asynchronous section where they could share a project they've created or possibly add some codes for the programming that they were able to do on their own at their own pace. Because we do have students that really do enjoy this, and some of them already have a little bit of a background. So you want to keep them moving along and give them more options. So giving them these tools are pretty helpful for them moving on. Now on page 10 of the handbook, there's some information in there about the videos having closed captioning capabilities and audio recordings being transcribed. I did find those options in my discovery this week for adding those to lessons. So that was pretty helpful. Although currently I don't have it set up that way, but I did now realize that could be added. On page 12 in the handbook, I did also notice there was some information in there about other responsibilities for the accessibility of the content. And for that, I did think about having a student's learning support teacher or paraprofessional or a guidance counselor who also assist with some of those responsibilities. They may be able to provide additional background on the student and their learning needs, which will ultimately have them being successful. And it could be in any of our projects that could be helpful. Now, I'll take it a step further. I'll share the VEX VR platform that we have available. So we'll go into here. And this is the main VEX page. I've created a 10-point code that you'll see shortly in the playground, our car perform, and you'll quickly be able to tell what it's doing. But on the side, there's a lot of the controls for coding that the students will learn. And they do actually use this on the first day after we discuss a lot of those questions you saw on our lesson plan. But then they will start to get involved in more of the coding. It's pretty simple. It's just drag and drop. I would suppose I click on drive forward. I could add it to the set, and then now that would be an optional thing toward the end that the car could drive forward. But I'll take a moment. I won't. Being able to use the tab button mentioned in the accessibility handbook. Now this VEX does work. You could operate with the tab and arrow keys to navigate around, but there is still quite a fair amount of learning and usage of the mouse. Okay, so now I'll get into the playground now. I selected the playground, and now we'll run our code that we did. And you can observe what happens to this car as it moves around. And you may be dizzy. I added a little spin here to get everyone dizzy. And we can hit the stop. So you noticed it ran off the code that I provided, and came back to his home starting point after doing a square pattern. And the students will get pretty creative and they'll try more, and which is great. I encourage them to be creative and test it and have fun with it. They also like to select different playgrounds. Up near the top, there's an option for a lot of choices in playgrounds that they could get. Some are free and some require more of a license. But I do have a lot of students that enjoy the maze part where they could try to navigate around with their car through the maze. And that's been pretty helpful. So that takes a look at two different lessons, one for 6th grade, one for 8th grade, and some different learning skills they have. Back for a second into the Rice article on Chapter 8, there were a lot of checklists that were informative, and I think they were pretty helpful as you were trying to navigate the idea of creating different lessons for accessibility for all students. And the final pages of the Rice article touch upon a lot of ideas with assessment and some choices of differentiation of different strategies for the learning. And that was helpful whether or not you were trying to assess formatively or summatively. There was a lot of good options and choices under the Rice article. Thank you for taking a look at my lessons and the evaluation of both.